would start with the one which traumatized me the most.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why it's got stuck in my head is because the figure in the story is very bizarre,
Mm-hmm.
and if you see it one time as a child, you remember it for every time to come.
So don't play with fire. If you play with fire, then you are dead.
Yeah, you die. A story I wouldn't tell my children is that that's the story my father told me.
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and they went to go on a hill to sled down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And on the bottom there was scrap.
In India, when we were kids, as bedtime stories, we always used to hear mythological stories or fascinating moral tales. However, in Germany, it seems to be slightly different. We all know or have heard Grimm Brothers stories and many more such stories from different parts of the world. In today's episode, let us delve into the bedtime stories that kids in Germany get to hear. And we have with us none other than Philipp Morbitzer today with us, who is going to take us through amazing, dark, and fascinating good night bedtime stories from Germany. Hi, Philipp, welcome.
Hi, Kieran. Thank you very much for the introduction.
Mhm.
Yeah, I brought some stories. The book is actually called Struwwelpeter.
Mm-hmm.
So these are stories which actually a couple of persons in America knew before when I went over there. So they are kind of known around the world, but not the quite real version might be known in the English context. But the Germans one are a little bit darker and have a little bit more context than the English versions. So I actually brought some dates. It was written in 1845 by Richard Hoffmann.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Christmas present for his son. So these stories are for a child
Mm-hmm.
and are kind of dark in some sense, or a couple of them are.
Yeah, let's definitely get into the stories. But before that, you seem to be very well prepared already.
Of course, I take this thing here seriously. It's my first podcast I'm ever on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for German, you always have to come prepared and to not get surprised.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Before we get into the stories that you have brought, do you remember a time where you had a favorite bedtime story as a kid?
Most of the times I heard stories at my grandparents' house
Mm-hmm.
because they read some good night stories
Mm-hmm.
for us. We started with something normal like Dornröschen
Mm-hmm.
and Rapunzel, so these normal chilled stories. But since I have an older brother, we quite quickly dived into something like the Struwwelpeter
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And actually, these things also have some pictures. In Wikipedia, you can also find the original pages.
Mm-hmm.
There are one thing I remembered until now because it was this figure. It's just so absurd that you remember it.
Yeah, maybe we put this figure on the video screen as well for the audience.
Yeah, you can edit the pictures when we come to the stories.
Yes.
Because they're usually on one side are the
Mhm.
texts and on the other side the pictures.
At what age maybe your grandparents started to tell you these stories?
So these kinds of stories maybe around 8.
8. Okay.
So we started slowly, but
Mhm.
quite quickly dived into some random shit.
Okay. So I think this is going to be an amazing next half an hour to 1 hour where we get to listen the German dark stories. And probably at some point I will also tell 1 or 2 stories from India, and then we can see the contrast of these stories.
The culture difference. Yeah.
Cultural difference, yeah. What also interests me is when your grandparents told you these stories, were they in the form of audio? Did they just tell you, or did they also show you some visuals, or how exactly was it?
So usually there is this book, the Struwwelpeter book, where every story is in it.
Mm-hmm.
So every household I know had this book, or at least each grandparents' household had this book. So there, this is this yellow front with Struwwelpeter on the front that most German children will know.
Okay, so I think then it's a good time now that we know at what age usually kids in Germany get to hear these stories. Maybe do you have a favorite story that you want to start with, or do you want to start with something that is easy for our audience?
I sorted here in my paper. I sorted from harmless to the worst, so we will start quite easily, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. For your information, on Wikipedia, you can see the pictures and the text. And if you don't remember the text, it is because the text is written in the old German style. So it is German. I can read it, but most of the people in my age can't read it.
Okay.
I think I know how to read it because my grandparents told me this language and showed me some text out of it. And therefore, I can read it if I concentrate enough, but some of these letters might be not known to you because this is the new writing. We have now the new writing, and the old writing was actually forbidden by the Nazis at some point.
Is it totally different? Because this is something new for me.
No, it's not totally different. There are some letters which you won't remember at all. Therefore, it's difficult to read for you. Since you're not mother tongue German, it would be very difficult. But I think if I tell, for example, colleagues who know German and I know them, the small differences, they might read it.
Okay. Yeah.
But I guess you will see when you look into the Wikipedia pages that these are look like another language, but it's German. Yeah, I brought. So the first story is from Struwwelpeter itself because this the main the book character. This shortest poem. So every story is a poem, and Struwwelpeter is a boy who refused to groom himself, and he never cut his hair or never cut his nails. Therefore, this picture also looks not that good for a child, I would say, except especially before you go to sleep. Therefore, its hair, it's like tangled, it's a mess, and his fingernails are very long, and it looks like out of a child nightmare, but it's normal for us to see this at a young age out of some reason. And this is actually one of the only stories which there is no punishment. It's just that he looks ugly or creepy. And the moral of it that you don't have to or should neglect your appearance or your hygiene, and to stay like not to look like him, to be less scary. So this is the first story on the top, which is like only 3 or 4 sentences or verses long, and that's the introduction into this book. So
this was really a short and probably sweetest story that you have for the day.
This is the most easiest story of the day. And I also looked up the differences between the English and the German versions. So in the German version, it has a stronger emphasis on the visual horror of the Struwwelpeter. And in the English version, it's more frames like a fictional figure, and the images are also a little bit downgraded.
In the English version?
In the English versions. So you will hear this more often when I say these images are downgraded and look more nicer. And you will also hear that some wordings are exchanged for more easier things to take for a child. So the Struwwelpeter is the first one. The second one would be the story of Johnny Head in the Air. It's in Germany. It's called Die Geschichte von Hans Kuck in die Luft. I don't know why they exchanged the name. Maybe out of some rhyme reasons or something like this.
Maybe it's a typical English name then. Probably.
Yeah. Hans is maybe not the most English name I know. Therefore, and Johnny is a boy who constantly walks around and looks in the air, and staring in the air, he didn't pay attention to what is in front of him, and then he overlooked the bridge and tripped into the river, and at the end got pulled out by 2 fishermen and the end of the story is that he is very embarrassed and gets laughed at. And that's also a quite easy story. So I said I start with the easy ones first.
At least there are some morals in the story.
Yeah, the moral is daydreaming. I mean, that's also one for up to now, because smartphones are now the new sky, I guess. So the moral is that you should stay aware of your surrounding and don't look too much in the sky or on your cell phone.
Yeah.
So there are also some morals you can take to this day now, maybe probably all of them. But that's also a quite easy story.
How did your grandparents or elders used to end this story? That say, do not daydream while walking, or
yeah, usually you just hear this poem because it's a poem. It sounds nice, it has good rhythm, and then it just stops, and that's it.
That's it.
Your parents don't tell you the morals. You have to figure it out yourself.
That's crazy.
I think that's also the reason why Heinrich wrote these poems, to get some morals, or most of the time the next poems will be about listening to parents and so on, and see the consequences if you don't listen to your parents.
What happens?
What will happen if you don't do it? I think that's some of the reasons I guess they had, but I'm not 100% sure what Heinrich really intended. Maybe just to scare his kid the crap out of it, but I don't know. The next story would be the story of the Fidgety Philip. So in German it's called Die Geschichte von Philipp. The story is also quite easy to take. It's nothing really happens. So Philip is a restless boy and always starts rocking his chair or is leaning forward and twists and fidget around on the dining table. And his parents tell him that he should stop it and sit normally and eat and don't play around. And at the end, he leans too far backwards and pulls on the dining room table and just spill all the food and trip the table and so on. He's not hurt, but he's humiliated at the end. And his parents look very disappointed. That's a point I have to mention, because in the poem it's written the parents are disappointed. Therefore, yeah, the moral is also quite easy to see. Don't rock your chair, sit on your table and eat. Don't play around.
Don't disappoint your parents.
And which I didn't know, it's the difference between English and German, as you would guess from Germans. The German version is that they emphasize on the idea of order and on discipline on the dining table. And in the English version, there's a stronger focus on the humor. So it's in the English version it's funny, in German versions it's strict and they're disappointed, the parents, and in the English versions it's funny.
And it's the end when you say parents are disappointed.
Yeah, that's the last sentence in the poem.
As a kid, probably you have to think what is going to happen after that.
You know, if the parents, the worst thing the parents could say that they are not angry, they are disappointed.
Wow.
And I think probably you also heard this sentence before.
Yes.
In Germany, it's a quite easy saying, yeah, I'm not angry, but I'm disappointed. If they're angry, it's just a small thing. They're angry about it, and next day it's fine. But if they're disappointed, it will last for a couple of days.
I think Germans are people with less words. Nix gesagt ist genug gelobt also holds true here. So manager says nothing, then everything is good.
Yeah, if you don't have something bad to say about it, it's fine.
Yeah, this is totally different in India. For example, what happens is, exactly if this story was told in India, then they would have said, at the end, parents are disappointed, then they are sad with you, they don't talk with you, you will not get presents next time, you will not get chocolates. So they also say the consequences and how exactly these consequences will be brought in your life. This is something missing in German story. And it leads to a lot of interpretations. Like the kid can think that anything could happen with him.
Do you know the story of Hansel and Gretel?
No.
Okay, that's also from Gebrüder Grimm, where these childs get set out in the woods because they're too annoying or something like this. So this is also one consequence you could think about.
They are just sent to the forest.
Yeah, they're sent to the forest, and they the full story is they get sent into the forest and they walk around and find a cookie house. They find a witch. But except from the poems from Heinrich, Brigitte Rings most of the time have a happy end. So they eat on the house, and then the witch comes out and say, yeah, come in, and the witch wants to eat the children. But the children notice it first, and they push the witch into the oven, and then the witch dies. And that's also the end of the story. It has a good ending, and no real moral, but it's just...
This story, I think my parents, or it's also popular in India, the second version which you said, at least I heard as a kid somewhere or the other.
Yeah, these are these normal stories which are known from Germany. The next story is the story I didn't get at all. It's the story of the wild huntsman. So die Geschichte vom wilden Jäger. A hunter goes into the woods with a gun and is ready to hunt a rabbit. And he spots one and he wants to take a shot, but he misses and the rabbit escapes. Then the hunter is so angry that he starts chasing the rabbit up to his own house. And the rabbit slips into his house. And when the hunter enters the house, the rabbit has also a gun. And then the hunter gets hunted by a rabbit with a gun. And at the end, the hunter flees into the woods, and the hare invites all his friends to eat from the stock of the hunter. And I asked ChatGPT what the moral is, because I don't know what the moral is. ChatGPT said, if you seek to harm others, be prepared for the tables to turn. So the story illustrates how power can shift and how the prey gets...
So basically, don't underestimate others. Could be.
I don't know. I don't get the story up to now because...
But this is something...
What?
But this is something your grandparents also used to tell you, or?
Yeah. This is a book. Every page has one of the stories, and you usually, since they are not long, you can make them in 10 or 15 minutes, all of them. Just told them, and then that's it.
But then...
So you heard the story before, but...
Let's say, if you can go back to when you were a kid and you listen to the story, either you are already asleep or you say, okay, what is happening? Don't you ever question your elders or grandparents?
Yeah, a good question. Not that I remember. Maybe I could ask my grandparents if I meet them again, what the moral of these stories are and if they remember the morals.
But as kids,
as kids, you lay in your bed, you just listen. You don't speak usually.
Okay.
You don't sit upright on your bed and listen to what they say. You just lay in bed, and then your parents say, look here, nice pictures. So it's crazy.
This is crazy. Maybe it's a good time to say one of the Indian stories. So this is what we used to hear as kids. Once there was a woodcutter. He used to cut woods and sell it to make his money. And one day he was cutting wood in the forest, and there was a river nearby. When he was cutting the wood using his axe falls in the river. So he starts crying. Okay, this was the only way I earn my money. Now I don't have anything anymore. He cries for an hour, and then a god comes from the river. And the god says, okay, why are you crying? And he says, my axe has fallen in the river. I can't lead my life. I don't know what to do. And then the god says, okay, wait for a minute. She goes in the river and she brings a axe made of gold. And then she asks, okay, is this your axe? I found it in the river. And he says, no, this is not my axe. This is not mine. I don't need it. And then she says, okay, I think I saw another one. And she goes in and she brings an axe made of silver. And she again asks him. He says, no, this is not mine. I don't want it. And then finally she goes and brings his axe. And he says, yes, this is mine and I want it. And then finally she gives him all the three axes made of gold, silver, and his own. And he's happy. At the end of the day, the moral was like, okay, you be honest in your life and you will be rewarded at some point.
Okay, yeah, that's I see your morals are more in the good thing, do good thing happens to you. The stories in Germany, it's like do bad thing, this will happen to you if you do bad things.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Are all your stories in India so like more fantasy? Because it's not usually that in real life that the god is coming
Correct.
out of the river. Is it always the case?
Yes, most of the stories have this theme of animals involved, jungle involved. Also, I remember another story like there is a one day an hunter goes into a forest and he sees a pigeon. So he sees the pigeon and he wants to kill the pigeon for his food. And when he was shooting the pigeon, there was an ant. The ant sees that the hunter is killing the pigeon and the ant bites his leg.
Okay.
And what happens is he misses his arrow and the pigeon flies away. After few days, there was a big rain and the water was flowing and this ant was drowning in the water. Suddenly the pigeon sees this ant and it throws a leaf. The ant goes on this leaf, it survives and they are happy. The moral of this story is if you help someone else, they will also help you in some or the other way in future. So help each other.
It's also good do good things, get
Yes,
good things in reward.
yes.
Okay,
There are,
yeah.
I think, yeah, now that you mentioned this, I think this is the theme that the focus is mainly on doing good things and then getting reward. If you do something bad, then these are the consequences. I both mean to say the same, but in different ways.
Yeah, but you get a positive feeling when you hear your stories, and you get a more negative feeling if you hear.
You are more scared when you
Yeah,
go to
you're
bed.
more scared. Yeah.
Now I understand why Germans are
Why
the way.
Germans are the way we are.
Yeah.
If you don't do bad things, it's good enough, you know.
If you go back in time and if you have a choice to say one of the craziest or deadliest story that you remember, which one would it be?
The craziest or deadliest story from me.
Or in other words, a story which you would never tell any kid.
A story I wouldn't tell my children is that that's the story my father told me. There were three brothers, and they went to go on a hill to sled down the hill. And on the bottom there was scrap, so metal things and so on. And I think it was even my father who drove down the hill and crashed into these metal things. Then he got a pipe through his leg, and then his brother told him just walk home. And he walked like for 30 minutes. He walked home with a hole in his leg and his muscle tortured and his leg not broken but quietly injured. And he walked back home, and it was the normalest thing you could imagine.
Wow.
That's
And this
that's
is
it. I mean, that's a crazy story, which is the most legal one I can tell. Yeah, it's also if you break your arm, usually you say, yeah, don't cry, it's already broken. Tears doesn't fix your arm anyway. So
wow. Yeah. And this is something you would not want to tell kids.
Yeah, I would say I would not send my kid home to walk 30 minutes just that I can sled even more. For example.
Wow. Yeah. I think the themes itself are totally different. And this is unbelievable for me to even listen that you had to listen to these stories and go through the emotions. I think at some point of time, maybe listening to these stories make you very much structured, organized, and you are always scared of probably things if they don't go right. Is it true, or at some point do you think, okay, these stories do not shape you, shape your behavior?
Most of the time, you get told these stories are when your parents want to tell you that on their time they were had a little bit more to deal with, or it was rougher this time, or something like this. It's always when I say, yeah, I'm working that much, and then my father comes always with the same stories. yeah, he worked 40-hour job. After that, he was at the barkeeping, and in the morning at 4 he stood up and go in supermarket, put the stuff into this into these cupboards and so on, and then he went back to his 40-hour jobs, and I was like, okay, it's fine, chill. Yeah, he never slept. In his stories, he never slept. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, yeah. These are always the stories you hear if you. Yeah, it's they don't mean it in a bad way, but they want to show you that they also got through a rough time, and
yeah,
you see what they become. You know, it's fine.
Yeah, in this aspect, I can say that even in India, it's more or less the same.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, parents want you to develop a strong, not culture, I would say, strong attitude towards life and be strong to anything that comes.
Yeah.
So probably they want to teach us good things, but probably also in different ways.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Do you have some more interesting stories before we end? Something that you want to?
If you only have time for one or two more, I would start with the one which traumatized me the most. It's the story of the little Backersam. In German, it's called Die Geschichte vom Daumenlutscher.
Okay.
The reason why it's got stuck in my head is because the figure in this story is very bizarre. And if you see it one time as a child, you will remember it every time to come. So the story is Conrad, which is a little boy, had the bad habit of sucking his thumb. And his mother warned him that he should never do it, especially when she's not there.
Okay.
Then as soon as she leaves, Conrad puts his thumb into his mouth and starts to suck his thumb. Then suddenly the door bursts open and the tall tailor enters. That's the most creepiest figure ever. And the tailor has a large scissor, and without the words, he grabs Conrad's thumb and snips it off. Then in the German version, you see blood coming out of his wounds, and Conrad learns his lesson the hard way. And when his mother returns, she found him crying, but it's too late, his thumbs are gone. The difference to the English and the German version is that in the German versions, the graphic is much more creepier. There's a lot of blood after they cut the thumb off. And in the English versions, it's a little bit more easier. And I also see in Wikipedia, it's also not shown the blood which was shown in the book. So even there, it was already put down to a certain grade.
This is unbelievable for me. Like as a kid, if this is what they tell you or show you in books, I would never put my thumb again in the mouth.
Yeah, see, it's working. It's working. See?
This is like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's one way of educating the kids, I guess.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And I guess the last one is also a quite nice one. It's the story of the very sad story of the matches. In Germany, it's called Die gar traurige Geschichte mit dem Feuerzeug. Pauline, which is also a small girl, is curious and is also ignoring the warnings of her parents, which is always important in these stories. She's told repeatedly not to play with the matches, but her curiosity gets the better with her and she starts playing with them. So while her parents are away, she sneaks over to the matches and strikes one, and fascinated by the flickering flames, she gets her clothes catch fire. And before she knows it, her complete body is in fire, and out of some reason, two cats are watching her in horror. I'm not sure why the cats are there, but it's not important. But at the end, when the parents return, it's too late. Only her red shoes remain and the ashes. And that's the end of the story. And I think the moral is quite easily, don't play with fire. Otherwise you burn to death.
Wow. Unimaginable.
Yeah, that's the most roughest story
you
in
have.
the book.
So don't play with fire. If you play with fire, then you are dead.
Yeah, you die.
I think these stories also need to be told in India. I think there is a necessity at least. people play with fire. Even when I go to India, I play with fire. Now I understand like where this safety culture, fire safety, and everything comes from. I was working in India in a petrochemical factory, and I got fire safety for maybe around half a day. They showed me everything, and it's very important. They trained me good enough for half a day or 1 to 2 days, as far as I remember. And there were lectures and everything. It was very understandable for me that okay, one needs to know fire safety if you are working in a petrochemical factory. And then I come to Germany. During my master's studies, we had a laboratory wherein there were 2 or 3 machines measuring hardness. And then the lecture was supposed to be for half an hour on this practical class, but the safety class itself was 1 hour. And I was like, how, why? This was something crazy for me, but now I understand. If you listen to these stories, you definitely, as a kid, if you listen to these stories, I think you always make sure that.
Yeah, I never played with matches, I have to say, since I heard the story. So it's working one or the other way. So, but it's, I think, quite cultural shock if you listen to these stories.
Yes, I also read that there are a lot of stories from Grimm brothers which are Disneyfied. Basically, they make the better versions of it.
Yeah, so Dornröschen, Rapunzel, and so on.
Yeah, so we always in India get to hear the better half of these stories. However, I think you unlucky poor people, poor kids. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, I feel. Or do you think it impacts, or is there a change in culture or the attitude once you grow up? Do you find any correlation?
I think, especially, I was in America for a couple of months and also went to high school and so on. And I saw that the Germans have much more order and structure and discipline in comparison to America. But I think America is also not the best country to compare itself. But I think that's one of the more important things I remember is that in the family I stayed, the children didn't really listen to their parents. They were doing everything they want, and the parents also didn't quite discipline them as I know it. So I think there's a big cultural difference in parenting, especially.
Did you tell some of these stories to the kids?
No, I didn't.
Okay, yeah, maybe it was your time to tell slide some of those into their ears, and then their parents would have thanked you forever.
Maybe.
Maybe they need to see this podcast and they behave properly in future.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. No, that was really interesting for me to listen to some of these stories. Definitely, these are the things which I would never have imagined, that the culture or the attitude towards life, of course, they are same, but in different ways. So this is nice to know what shapes the attitude towards life. Before we end, maybe I have some rapid fire questions for you. If you have to choose one particular story that you would want to tell to future generation or kids, which one will it be? You just have to say the name.
I think the last one I told, the thing with the matches, is an important thing, because when you play with fire, you are not the only one who can get hurt. If you lick your thumb, it's not that drastic that you get your thumb licked off, but I think the matches one is also one of the most important things.
My mother till date says, okay, don't play with fire all the time, but I think she did not find this hack. What happens if you play with fire? They are too soft and it doesn't work. Okay. Yeah, the next question is, if you have a chance to change one of these stories, the ending of one of these stories, which one would you choose and how would you change it?
There is a story which I didn't read, but it's the story of the flying robot. In a short term, it's a child got out in the rain or in the storm, and his parents told him not to, and he left with an umbrella, and he got taken away, and then vanishes. I think that's also a story which I find quite bizarre, because it's okay if you take an umbrella out of it in the storm if it's raining. Yeah, I think that's a story which I find a little bit more over dramatic as it should be.
Okay, who is your favorite German story writer?
The Gebrüder Grimm.
Okay.
They have so many stories that are not that normal as you know them, but they are also quite good. There are also lots of books. My grandparents had a whole collections of them, and they were also they are longer stories, quite nice to hear when you go to bed, as far as I remember from a child.
If you have a chance to choose from different cultural background stories, let's say, for example, if you have a chance to use Indian stories or German stories, which one would you prefer?
If I would read them too much out, for example?
Yes.
Since I raised that way, and I think it's not that bad that you hear some bad stuff, I would prefer the German stories.
Okay, yeah, that's all for today. I think the audience also have enjoyed this session pretty much. Believe me, this is something most of the people in this world would never have heard of. We always get the filtered versions of this.
That's true.
That is too polite and nice, and that is why people still play with fire and go out in the rain.
Yeah, see?
So I think hopefully all the people who are watching this, maybe you never go again in the rain or play with fire or suck your thumb.
That's the most important one. Yeah.
That's the most important one. With this, we come to the end of this podcast. Thank you, Philip, for joining in. If you like this content, please like, share, and subscribe. And
if it gets enough likes, I come back again.
Let's go. Chat. All the audience, how many likes do we want on this video?
150.
Okay, the challenge is on. If we get 150 likes on this video, we will have Philipp Morbitzer once again with another take on cultural differences between India and Germany. We will plan that definitely. Until next time, see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.